Okay, Erev Tov, Bruchim Habayim, to our extra bonus class, which is going to be on Yonah. So there are a few things that you want to have for tonight. You want to have first your Sefer Yonah, whether it's going to be a real book or a virtual one. Also, if you go into either the classroom or onto our WhatsApp group, there were a couple of links sent out. The first one is a map. The second one is a song. The third is a piyut. We're going to start in that order. Oh, no worries. Okay. So the first one, if you can open, is the map that I sent. Now you'll notice it says international highways on the top of the map. So I want to tell you a story before we actually look at the map. You want a map? Okay, let's see how we can get you a map, Abba. Yeah.
Rabbi.
Yes. The camera zoomed back in. Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you so much. So they say this is a story. True or not true, it's a good story. When one of the Israeli ambassadors came to the United Nations, he said, before I start talking, we hear about peace, and I want to tell you a story. He said, the Jews were biblical people, so let me tell you a story about the Bible. When the Jews were crossing over, after 40 years in the desert, Moses was taking them to the Jordan River. And before going to the river and crossing, like any good leader, he wanted to test the water and see how high it is, how low it is. But he didn't want to get wet. So he took off his clothing, he put down his staff, and he went into the water. He took a dip, wanted to see the depth. When he came out, he was looking for his staff, he's looking for his clothing, and he noticed that the Palestinians stole it. And one of the leaders from the Palestinian embassy got up and said, that's a lie. It can't be. We weren't even there. We weren't even around. And the Israeli ambassador said, well, thank you very much. And on that note, now let's start our conversation. I think about that story a lot because as much as I tell you we have to know Tanakh, I think it's really critical that we learn history. Something as simple as learning the map. Today I see a lot of Jews walking around with this little, looks like a little triangle. And they call it the map of Israel. But the truth is that if you learn a little bit of history, that's not the map of Israel. It's like if you took a piece of California and you told me that's the United States. Sure, it's a part of Israel. Sure, California is a part of the United States, but it's not representative of that which is so much greater. We don't know our own history. Something as simple as our boundaries of our country, up until where we extended, where we came from. And these are really critical facts. When we live in a world where fiction and facts are often, they're interchanged. People make things up assuming you're never going to Google it, assuming that the Wikipedia page that you got onto is not going to be accurate. I want to look at this map because we're going to talk about Yonah. If you recall, tell me a little bit of what you know about Yonah HaNavi. I'm looking at you, Elchanan. What do you know? Give me in 30 seconds or less.
Yonah was a prophet. He got a prophecy from Hashem. Shaar. He did not want to do the prophecy. Want me to explain?
No, very good. So what does he do?
He goes to the sea and he goes on a ship. Then the whole story.
Beautiful. Okay. So turn your map to the side so you could actually look at it. And I want to just geographically show you where we're looking at. Bidyuk. So if you look at this map, it's a map that actually predates the borders of Israel. Okay. The reason I chose this one is because I like what it has on it. So if you look at the center, okay, you're going to find actually center. Let's go to the left. You'll see the Great Sea, right? The Mediterranean. If you go towards our harbor, you'll see Gaza or Gaza over there. And that's strip, right? The strip of the land of Israel. If you go towards the north, somewhere where it says, I would say Hamat over there, or Katna, which we would call today in modern Hebrew, it's probably the city of Tzipoli, which is near where the Navi Yonah lives. So he gets a prophecy. He's now in the region of Zivulun. That's which tribe he was living with. And he's given a prophecy to go to the city of Nineveh. Now follow me on the map. That means he was sent to go north and then east. If you'll notice, move northeast. You see the city of Nineveh. Nineveh was the capital of, if you look down, Ashur, right? So Ashur or the Assyrians, where Sancherib comes from, northeast, and like Dahlia correctly said, today that would be modern-day Iraq. Yeah. He's tasked to go northeast. What does he do? Instead, he goes from what we consider the Galil, the northern part of Israel today. He goes south. He goes southwest to Yaffo, which is a port city. He then takes a boat and he heads northwest. So follow me northwest. It's what we consider Asia Minor, which today is part of Turkey. You see the city of there, it says Tarsus, and then in parentheses it says Tarshish. The reason it says Tarshish and then question mark is our Chachamim debate where Tarshish actually is. Many of them say, no, this is where it is. Some stipulated, no, Tarshish is that much further. It's in northern Africa. Some even felt it was closer to Spain. Again, you have to figure that out. But at the very least, we know definitely there is a city, Tarsus, which was a major trade center, which would be in line with why their boat's going from Yaffo, which is a port city, to another port city. It makes sense. It was a trade route. Yeah. So Yonah HaNavi really goes completely out of the way. I just want to show you, if we're looking at a map for a minute, whenever we'll see it soon. When Yonah identifies himself, he says, Ivri Anochi. What is Ivri? Ivri is Jew. But where does the word Ivri come from? Avraham, we say, was the first Ivri. Ever in Hebrew means from the other side. Now again, the Jews who never learned the map assume which side are we talking about? The other side of the Jordan River. The problem is, remember I told you, that's only a sliver of Israel. Now, Avraham Avinu comes from, if you move all the way to the right back towards Nineveh, you'll see the Tigris and Euphrates. If you know anything about early ancient civilizations, this whole region is called the Fertile Crescent. This, because of its natural resources, is where human beings populated the earth, Avraham Avinu being one of them. When we say he was from the other side of the river, we're actually talking about the Euphrates. We're not talking about the Jordan River, okay? If you learn much later on, when Yehoshua comes to the land and actually divides it, this whole region to the east of the Jordan River is settled by 2.5 tribes, right? Reuven, Gad, Chatzi Shevet, Menashe. We're talking about a vast piece of land that was settled by the Jewish people. Now, if you look at Nineveh, just something interesting. Nineveh was the capital city of Ashur. Ken. We said it's modern-day Iraq. They also believe in the Navi Yonah, so much so they held him in very high esteem. Unfortunately, and I say unfortunately because people don't realize that terror doesn't discriminate. It also kills its own people, right? We happen to be now the recipients of terrorist organizations, but it's not new. Terror doesn't care who it kills. So if you'll recall, in 2014, in the city of Mosul, or as Americans say, Mosul, yeah, one of the capital cities of Iraq, ISIS came in, and what did they do? Because they have no regard for human beings, they certainly have no regard for history. They came into the city, and they blew up one of the oldest mosques. I'll tell you the name, you'll tell me why you think it's named that way. Yeah, the mosque they grew up is called Al-Nabi Yunus. This is where legend has it that Yonah eventually does come. He gives the city Musar. The non-Jews repent. And in commemoration, they end up building a valley of Yonah. They build a mosque in his place. Even some scholars go so far as to say Yonah Navi was buried there. Yeah, they had a lot of tradition in the city of Mosul. Comes 2014, 2017, between ISIL and ISIS, they blew the place to smithereens because their regard for human beings doesn't exist, and certainly not, unfortunately, for archaeological enterprises. So this is what we're looking at. We're looking at a story where Yonah's tasked to go northeast. He travels south to go northwest. I want to divide the story of Yonah into 3 parts. The personal side, the national side, and then the universal side. Because really this story, I was reading it, and every single sentence of it is its own book of Musar. That's the truth. There are so many lessons to learn. I think it's not fair that we only read it on Yom Kippur, when the only thing we're really thinking about is how thirsty we are and when the fast is going to be over. Because the lessons that are so deeply entrenched it's gold. So let's look at the Navi, okay? If you open up the Navi to Yonah, and this is where you want to use your own. Let's look at the first chapter. to put it into historical sequence, Yonah comes after which prophet? I'll give you a hint. We have Eliyahu Hanavi. His student is Elisha. Yonah Hanavi comes afterwards. Bidyu. Gehazi ends up being excommunicated. Yonah Hanavi takes over. It's in the time frame of Yarovam ben Yoash. So great-great-grandson of the first Yarovam that we spoke about. This is when Yonah Hanavi is the prophet. So look at chapter 1. Let's look at the first verse. Vayidvar Adonai el Yonah ben Amitai lemor. And Hashem spoke to Yonah, telling him the following. Kum, get up, lech el Ninveh, ha'ir hagdola, ukra eleh ki alta ra'atam lefanai. The prophet wasn't just a prophet for the Jewish people. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to him, go to this city. The people are doing tremendous evil. And before I destroy them, I want you to warn them. Right? It's not fair to just come and punish somebody. I didn't even know I did something wrong. Why am I now in timeout? Go and warn the people of Nineveh. What is Yonah's reaction? Vayakom Yonah livroch Tarshisha. He decides he's running away. Who's he running away from? Milfnei Adonai. He runs away from God. Vayered Yafo. He goes down to Yafo, the port city. Vayimtza oniyah bat Tarshish. And he finds, there's actually a boat that's heading out. It just came, but it's heading back to Tarshish. Vaiten srara. The Midrash over here says, what does it mean he gave the wages? So Yonah was a prophet. He wasn't a poor prophet. He comes and the boat is waiting for it to fill up. You used to have this in Israel when you get off the airplane, the nesher. They wouldn't leave until they have a minimum of 10 passengers. So if your flight happened to come in early, you'll wait an hour until they fill it up. Yonah comes and he says, I need to get out of town now. And the Midrash says, he tells the captain, how many empty seats do you have? 30? Good, I'm buying them all out. Just set sail. Get me out of this country. He's running away. He's going to the city of Tarshish. What does HaKadosh Baruch Hu do? V'Adonai hetil ruach gedola el hayam, v'yisar gadol bayam, v'oniyah chishva lishaber. HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings this horrible storm, and the boat is about to break apart. It's moving, it's blowing. If you've ever been out to ocean, you know that feeling. I remember we once took a small boat ride. I think it was from St. Thomas to St. John. And in the beginning, it's so nice and cool because you could see the land, you could see the island, and then suddenly you're stuck in that middle place, and there's a certain fear that grips you. You're middle of nowhere. Where's Yonah in this whole story? Vayiru hamalachim. So the sailors are really afraid because they know what to be scared of. I once had that when I was on a flight from New York to the Ukraine. I never in my life had such terrible turbulence. The plane was jumping in the sky. Now, between me and you, it was a Russian airline. I'm convinced the pilot was probably drunk, if there was a pilot. And I look at the stewardess, I said, are we gonna die? And in her wonderful Russian courtesy, she says, sit down and shut up. I said, for sure we're gonna die. So I turned to the guy sitting near me. I said, are you scared? He said, no. I said, have you ever flown internationally? He said, no. I said, exactly. That's why you're not scared. I've been flying since I'm 0. This is not normal. The sailors are scared because... No. By the time I got off, I said, either I'm going to bike home, or I'm going to take a boat, or I'm going to walk, but I'm not going to fly with this airline anymore. The sailors here are scared because they know the ocean, and they see a storm that's highly unusual. So everybody starts screaming to their own gods. They say, maybe we're too heavy. They start throwing things out. Where's Yonah? Yonah yarad el yarketei hasefina, vayishkav ve'iraden. Yonah goes down into the bowels of the boat, and he's sleeping. Vayikra ve'elav rav hachover. So the captain comes over to him. Vayomer lo. And you know these words from Selichot. Ben Adam, Malecha Nirdam. Everybody on the boat is praying to their gods. We're all trying now as a group effort to save ourselves, and you're sleeping. Vayomer lo, Malecha Nirdam. Why are you sleeping? Kum kira el Elohecha. Come, you pray to your God. We're praying to our gods. You try yours. Ulai Yitashet Elohim lanu v'lo novad. Maybe your God will help and we won't all die over here. And then they say there's something wrong. There's something unusual about the storm. It's not passing. The Midrash says they look around and see the other boats seem to be doing fine. They're the only ones who are stuck in this crazy turmoil. So they turn to each other. Look at Pasuk Zayin, the 7th verse. Vayomeru ish el reu, lechu v'napil hagoralot. Let's throw lots. V'neida b'shel mi hara hazot. Clearly, there's somebody on this boat. You have to understand, these are highly religious people. They're not Jewish, but they clearly believe in a God, in some higher power. This is something wrong. This is clearly a message from something greater than us. Let's throw lots. Let's find out who it's going to fall on. Vayapil goralot, vayipol hagoral al Yonah. And whose name comes up? Yonah. Vayomeru elav. So they say to him, Hagida na lanu, basher lemi hara hazot lanu. Why are we getting all this bad? What's going on? Ma melachtecha. What do? Umeayin tavo, ma artzecha, ve'ei mizeh amata. Who are you? Tell us a little bit more about yourself. Which nation are you from? Which land are you from? Give us some more information to work with, because clearly you're the problem. Vayomer, so he says to them something very interesting. He says, Ivri anochi, I'm Jewish. Ve'et Adonai Elohei HaShamayim ani yareh, and I'm a God-fearing person. Asher asa hayam v'et hayabasha, I believe in the one who created heaven and earth. Yonah is running away from HaKadosh Baruch Hu because he doesn't want to fulfill Hashem's commandment. And yet when asked to introduce himself, you would think he shouldn't blow his cover. He should say, I'm from this pagan country, and this is what... His introduction is, no, I'm a God-fearing person, and I believe in the creator of the universe. Oh, so what happens? Vayiru hanashim yira gedola. Now the people are very scared. Vayomeru elav. So they say, Ma zot asita. You clearly angered your creator very, very much. Why? Ki yadu hanashim kim lefnei Adonai hu boreach ki yigid lahem. Yonah told them, I'm running away from God. And they're not asking really what he did as much as, are you crazy? What are you doing? I want to stop here a minute before he tells them what to do. And I want to examine something very strange. You find Yonah's a Navi. In order to be a Navi, you have to be a God-fearing person. So you could be a Navi Sheker, right? You could be a false prophet. But to be a real Navi, you really have to believe in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So clearly Yonah Navi fits that character. And we're not talking about somebody who's a scam, somebody who's a charlatan. He's a real prophet. He hears HaKadosh Baruch Hu give him a command. He doesn't want to fulfill it. His knee-jerk response, let me run away. Now you see this behavior very obviously in little kids. Adults do it the same way, we just do it more sophisticated. Yeah. You tell a child something they don't want to do. What do? They go hide in their room. They pretend they didn't hear you. As parents, a lot of the time we're swallowing and biting our lips because we know they heard us. They know, we know, but we're all going to pretend that nobody here knows. It's almost like when you play peekaboo with little kids. How many times could you do the same stupid trick? 100 times, right? Where's Ima? Back. Every time the kid giggles, because their assumption in their juvenile mind is, if I close my eyes and I don't see you, you don't see me. Right? We call this the ostrich dome syndrome. Why? What do they pick on ostriches for? Oh, so they say ostriches have very long necks. When they perceive danger, what is their knee-jerk response? They bury their head in the sand. Now, we look at them and say, you're such a fool. If you bury your head in the sand, the problem doesn't go away. You simply don't see it until it comes to knock you over. But the truth is, human behavior is such that when we feel the shame of being caught, you see this, by the way, a lot of times, if you ever see people who are unfortunately caught and brought to jail, and then they're brought into the docket, what do they almost always do to their faces? They cover them. You're a criminal. You're registered. We have your name on record. The natural human reaction is, where could I bury myself? Tell me where you find this in the Tanakh, and I want to take you to two places there.
What's his name? The son of
Yafeh. Take me, though, before the sun. Yes, but take me before the sun. Yafeh. Let's go to Bereshit. Okay? Open up, if you can, to Bereshit Bet. Pasuk Chet. So it's going to be Bereshit chapter 2, verse 8. Elchana, what was the one commandment that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave to Adam and Chava? Yeah, very good. Mikol eitz ba'agan, toch. This one, b'li ayin hara. From every tree in this garden, eat, enjoy, be merry. There's one tree you shouldn't eat. Just don't eat from the Etz Hadat. Now we know the error. HaKadosh Baruch Hu said don't eat. Adam HaRishon was orthodox. What did he do? He added chumrot. He added stringencies. HaKadosh Baruch Hu told you very clear instructions. Don't eat from the tree. What does Adam come tell Chava? Very good. He says, don't touch it. Hashem said, don't touch it. Hashem said, don't touch it. That's a lie. That's a lie. You find this all across the board. When you start adding and making things up in the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's when things always go wrong. You can make up whatever you want, but make sure you preface it with, I made something up. Just say those words. I like to make things up. God did not say this. The creator of the world didn't command it. I made it up. So what happens? They eat from the tree and immediately, let's look at Pasuk Chet. Let's look back at Zayin for a minute. Vatikach mipiryo. So they take from the Etz Hadat, vatocha. Vatiten gam liisha imo vayochal. So Adam HaRishon is very kind. He also shares with his wife.
It wasn't his wife.
Oh, she touched the tree. And she said, hey, you see, we didn't die. Adam then eats from the tree, gives some to Chava. Vatipakachna einei shneim. And suddenly their eyes opened up in a way that they saw reality different. V'yedu ki erumim hem. And they suddenly perceive, wait, we're naked. V'yitpuru alei teina. I don't know why all the pictures, I think it's probably because they took it from the wrong Bible. In all the pictures, they make the Etz Hadat an apple tree. Nobody's opinion is an apple tree. The Torah says either it was grapes or it was teina, but apples it doesn't say. Correct. Okay, so they take now the leaves of the teina. If you've ever seen the leaves of the teina, they're beautifully big. V'yasu lahem chagorot, and they cover themselves. Look at Pasuk Chet, the 8th verse. Vayishmu et kol Adonai Elohim mithaler bagan. They hear the voice of God in the garden. L'ruach hayom, and what is their reaction? Vayitchabe Adam v'ishto. They hide. They're playing hide and seek with the creator of the world. Vayitchabe Adam v'ishto mipnei Adonai Elohim b'toch etz hagan. They hide. Now the truth is, if you've ever been in a forest, you could really hide. The problem is, you can't hide from the one who has X-ray vision. You could hide from human beings. I had a teacher many, many years ago whose sister got lost. Her name was Suri Feldman. I'm sure you don't remember this story. This is years ago. I was maybe in 7th grade. She had gone to, I think it was Bear Mountain with her friends, and they took a wrong turn for a minute. And she ended up getting lost in this tremendous forest that unfortunately, when people are lost, more often than not, they're not found. And if they are, you remember this story? I remember as a young child, I've never seen such mobilization in the Jewish community between the Hatzalah and the other organizations. They were sending out thousands of footmen all night to find her. And thank God they found her. They found, I think it was 3 days later, they found her. And they had a famous song. They were parading in the streets of Borough Park. It was like the whole entire city was celebrating that Suri Feldman was found. Why? Because the usual is they're not found. But here you find who they hiding from. They're hiding from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is nice. What does he say? Vayikra Adonai Elohim el Adam, vayomer lo ayeka. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, where are you? Where are you? I'm not going to tell you names, but once, when 2 of my little boys were little, I turned to one of them and I said, where are you? And he says, I'm on the couch. I said, oh, yeah? What are you doing on the couch? So he said, I'm eating my bagel. So I come to the couch. I said, you're eating a bagel? You're eating ice cream. He looked at me. He said, oh, why? And his older brother looked at him with amazement. Like, how did you have the chutzpah to try to get away with it? Now, for a 2-year-old, 3-year-old, that makes sense, right? Okay, you tried. You said bagel. I caught you. It was ice cream. End of the story. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, before accusing, is giving Adam and Chava an opportunity. Explain yourself. Where are you? And what does Adam say? ויאמר את קולך שמעתי בגן, וירא כי הרים אנוכי ואכבד. You know, God, I heard your voice, and I'm embarrassed because I'm not dressed. Adam Arishon, that's not your biggest problem. But you see, innate in the teva, in the nature of the human being, is when we do things wrong, and we know they're wrong, we hide. Shame is not a bad thing. You know, sometimes you live in a world where people do things, and instead of them saying, you know, everybody here does wrong things. We all do it. And if you think you don't, you just add to the list, you now are in denial. But the ability to feel shame is a good thing. We're not talking about tremendous shame, bad shame, but the ability to recognize I'm messing up. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I know I'm doing wrong, and I'm not parading it around town. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I know that what I'm doing right now is not in line with my values. At the very least, I'm not going to go mark it as a celebration for everybody to see. So you have that with Adam. Let's go to his son. If you look at chapter Gimel, so the third chapter, no, Dalid. Let's go to Dalid. I thought it was Gimel. Dalid, it's Dalid. Look at Perek Dalid, Pasuk He, the 5th verse. Tell me about Cain.
In heaven,
Yeah.
Cain and Abel were two brothers, and they were both asked by Hashem to make a korban. Cain was a farmer. Abel was a sheep shepherd, and ultimately, Cain brings one of his worst battered up vegetables, and Abel brings his best.
Who does Hashem accept?
Hashem accepts Abel.
Good. So what does Cain do?
Kills Abel.
Yeah, let's stop there. Okay, so Cain now is the first murderer in the world. Yeah, the world is brand new. He goes and he stabs his brother to death. Look at Pasuk He, the 5th verse. Ve'el Cain ve'el minchato lo sha'a. HaKadosh Baruch Hu did not take Cain's sacrifice. Vayichar leCain ma'od vayiplu panav. Instead of being angry at himself and saying, well, how did I mess up? He gets very angry. ויאמר אדוני אל קין, למה חרה לך ולמה נפלו פניך? לא אם Hashem says, what are you getting so angry? If you would have done the right thing and good, so it would have been good. And if not, at the very least, accept your consequences. He doesn't. He goes ahead and he murders Hevel. And then if you look at Pasuk Tet, so the 9th verse, Vayomer Adonai el Cain, Aye Hevel achicha. Where's Hevel, your brother? And what does Cain answer? Vayomer lo yadati. I don't know. HaShomer achi anochi. Am I my brother's keeper? You see, the loop of badness, our Chachamim tell us, mitzvah goreret mitzvah. When you do one good thing, it puts you on a good track. Avera goreret avera. Unfortunately, when you start doing bad things, you keep tripping up trying to cover up for them. You find over here both Adam and Cain, they err. And instead of stopping and saying, we made a mistake, but let's minimize the damage, they keep tripping over themselves. You find over here again, Yonah Navi, instead of saying, hold on, I did something wrong, what does he tell the sailors? He doesn't say, take me back to Israel. Let's go back to Yonah a minute and see what does he say. So if you open up the Navi Yonah, we're still in chapter 1. And it's going to be Pasuk Yud Aleph. So the 11th verse, right? Chapter 1. Yonah doesn't tell them, you know what, I messed up. His introduction, I'm a God-fearing person. This is all because of me. The next sentence should be, so take me back so I could do the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Yes? That would be the logical sequence. Yonah Navi does not say that. Instead he says, Vayomeru elav ma na'aseh lach. So the sailors say, so what should we do with you? V'yishtok hayam me'alenu ki hayam holech v'tzorech. What should we do so that we don't all die in this storm? Vayomer aleim, he says to them, Sa'uni v'atiluni el hayam. Just throw me into the river. Throw me into the sea. V'yishtok hamayim me'alechem. And the water, I promise you, it's already going to get quiet. Ki yodea ani ki bisheli hasar hagadol hazeh alechem. I know that all this trouble is because of me. And you have to ask yourself, why? Why does Yonah, aside from the element of human nature we said is people mess up and they hide from shame, Why does Yonah not take this opportunity and say, you know what, let me do Teshuvah? Instead, he says, no, just throw me into this water. Let me drown, and you'll be okay. I want to now take you to the national side of Yonah and show you what true leadership, even when incorrect, what it symbolizes. Look with me. You should have the link. We did? Okay, no. Go with me to Safari. We sent on the Mechilta? Not to the Mechilta. No, not that one. Okay, open up, please, in Safari. You're going to want to type in the following. Safaria. Okay, type in it. What did I say, Safari? No, I mean Safaria. Do not go to the Safari, please. Go to Safaria. Type in Mechilta, either in Hebrew or in English. I'll spell it for you. In English, you just write Mekhilta. And right away, it's going to pop up Mechilta de Rabbi Ishmael. That's what you want. In Hebrew, you can write it Mem Chet Yud Lamet Taf Aleph, and then the Rabbi Ishmael. Click on. You see, it says Tractate Pischa, which in Aramaic is Pesach. Very good. Click on 1, chapter 1, and go all the way down to let's look at number 17. I'm not going to do 16 with you, but for those of you interested, 16 explains to you why Yonah Navi was running away specifically from Israel. If you find the Mechilta, why?
Because he didn't want that the non-Jews would listen to Hashem, but the Jews would.
Okay, but why is he specifically leaving the land of Israel?
Oh, because Hashem wouldn't give prophecy.
Yafeh mod. Okay, so if you look into the Mechilta 16, which we're not going to read now, the Tanaim explained to us that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will not give Yonah prophecy outside the land of Israel. And he knew that, which is why he specifically goes to the port city of Yaffo and then leaves, saying, I'm not going to get prophecy. So in my cellular, he didn't either want to pay the Wi-Fi on the cruise, Dahlia. So he says, Chalas, it's too much money. I'm leaving this town. That way, I'm not going to get any more messages. If I don't get messages, there's nobody to send, nobody to talk to. But why? Okay, Yonah Navi, in the end of the day, he's not doing this out of stupidity. He's not doing this because he made one mistake and now he doesn't. It's a very calculated choice he's making for the national good, or seemingly the national good of the people. Look at 17 with us. Okay, so we're going to now compare 3 different Nevi'im. I want to read to you. Nimtzeta ata omer shilosha banim hem. There were 3 prophets. Echad tava kvod ha'av. One of the prophets stood up for the honor of the father. Echad tava kvod ha'av or kvod ha'ben. One of the prophets stood up both for the honor of the father, and one of them stood up for the honor of the child. What are you showing me? No, I like it here. Yeah. The other one, echad tava kvod ha'ben v'lo kvod ha'av. One of them stood up for the honor of the son, and not for the father. And the third one, v'echad tava kvod ha'av v'lo kvod ha'ben. So you have 3 different prophets. Who are these? Let's look at the 3 of them. Yirmiyahu HaNavi, tava kvod ha'av v'kvod ha'ben. Yirmiyahu HaNavi stood up both for HaKadosh Baruch Hu and for the Jewish people. Where do you see that? If you look into Echa, shenemar, like it says, Nachnu pashanu o marinu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's true. We sinned. We erred. But ata lo salachta. We have complaints against you too. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we made a mistake. It's true. The Jewish people, we erred greatly. But you're the parent. You should have been the bigger one here. Yirmiyahu HaNavi is being a chutzpan. He's treading this fine line between saying, I, as the leader of the Jewish people, I'm accepting the responsibility that as a nation we messed up. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you as the creator, you need to accept that you also have to grow up. You're the parent. In the end of the day, how many times do we as parents, teachers, those who are in charge, we just swallow? Because we're bigger. Not because they're right, but because we're bigger. Because we're the ones in authority. And because we have that power, we also then have to know when to administer it. So Yirmiyahu was able to balance both standing up for the Jews and for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And for that, he remains a prophet. לפיכך נכפלה נבואתו, שנאמר, ועוד נוסף עליהם דברים רבים כהמה. Therefore, he gets to keep his place as prophet. Yirmiyahu, you do the perfect job of that sensitive balance. Tell me who stood up for the kavod, for the honor of the father, but in the process vilified the Jews.
Oh, what's his name?
Eliyahu Hanavi. What happened to Eliyahu Hanavi? Oh. So, יפה. Safta, we're going to co-host this class. No, Ritzini, if you want to learn Torah, you should ask my mother-in-law. I'm putting in a formal request that you should come teach us also, Bezrat Hashem. That Wednesday was so beautiful together. So what happens? Eliyahu Hanavi, he's angry at the Jewish people, rightfully so. They're not listening. They're busy following the Baal. They're busy killing all of the prophets that were actually true. And then he gets frustrated with them. They have that one moment on the mountain where they say, Adonai hu Elohim. But after that, they go back to their own ways. And he's angry. We know Eliyahu Hanavi, we always say Eliyahu hu Pinchas. Now, obviously, Eliyahu Hanavi and Pinchas historically couldn't be the same person. But the personality is the same. What do you know about Pinchas? He was a Kanai. He was a zealot for the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He kills Zimri and Cosby. Eliyahu Hanavi is angry at the Jewish people, and he runs away to the mountains. I have a shiur on him, on Eliyahu Hanavi. And he just asks Hashem, I want to die. I can't deal with this. What happens? V'hinei elav kol. He hears a voice, kol d'mamad daka. Remember, first there's a wind, and then the mountains are moving, the rivers, and kol d'mamad daka. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes and gives him musar. He rebukes him. He says, Ma lecha po Eliyahu? Why are you here in the desert? What are you doing here? Vayomer, so Eliyahu Hanavi says, Kano kineti l'Adonai Elohei tzavaot. I'm here because I stood up for you. Ki azvu britcha b'nei Israel, because the Jewish people, they left your covenant. Et mizbechotecha harsu. They destroyed your mizbeach. Vet nevi'echa haragu b'charev, and they killed all the prophets. V'yivater ani levadi, and who did they leave? Me. V'yivakshu et nafshi lekachtia. And they want to kill me. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, all I did was try to stand up for you, for your kavod. And in repayment, the Jewish people, what do they want to do? They want to kill me. What does HaKadosh Baruch Hu say to him? Lech shuv l'darkecha midbara Damasek. Go back home. Ubata u'mashachta et Chazal lemelech al Aram, ve'et Yehu ben Nimshi timshach lemelech al Yisrael, ve'et Elisha ben Shafat me'avel mechola. Eliyahu Hanavi, everything you said is true. I don't want to hear it. I didn't ask you to stand up for my kavod. I asked you to take care of the Jewish people. You can't do the job? Okay. Go back home, finish the loose ends, and now the prophecy is going to be given over to Elisha. And that's hard. Because who is Eliyahu Hanavi standing up for? He's standing up for the creator of the world. It's not like he was standing up for himself. Right? This is not an ego trip he's taking. And yet HaKadosh Baruch Hu says to him, I didn't want to hear. Sure, I could be angry at my children. Right? You have this a lot. I could be angry at my children. But if somebody else comes to tell me bad things, you better believe they should start saying Shema Yisrael. Right? You don't come give me musar about my kids are the best. In private, I could complain about my kids. But in public, they're my children. Let's look at Yonah. So what happens with Yonah? Tava kvod haben. So Yonah Navi is the third prophet. He stands up for the honor of the Jewish people. Why? Belo kvodav. But he doesn't stand up for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Shene'emar, like it says, Vayakam Yonah levroach Tarshisha milfnei Adonai. The moment Hashem says, go to the city Nineveh, give them musar, Yonah's knee-jerk response is, no. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, no. I'm going to run away and I'm not fulfilling this prophecy. I'm going to see in a minute why. Makatuv. So what happens? Vayidvar Adonai el Yonah shenit. Hashem does come to him a second time, but not a third time. Shenit nidbar imo v'lo nidbar imo shlishit. He didn't lose his nivuah like Eliyahu Hanavi immediately. Rather, Hashem came to him one more time. But after that, Yonah, you're not the right messenger. Look at 19, and let's try to understand why. Why is Yonah not going to fulfill the prophecy? And how is it him standing up for the honor of the Jewish people?
Because he knew that Nineveh would do Teshuvah, the Jewish people. They will overtake Ben.
Yafeh mod. Or,
He thought maybe he will be a liar. They won't do it, and then no.
oh no, it's good that you're saying that. That's the Radak. יפה. Baruch shekivant. That's beautiful. So, as is, Yonah Navi was always being, all the Nevi'im are always accused of everything. He was accused of being a false prophet. The Radak and other commentaries say he was worried. He's going to go, he's going to tell them in 40 days he's going to be destroyed. They're going to do Teshuvah. They're not going to be destroyed. And the Jewish people are going to say, see, Yonah, you're not a real prophet. You say lies. Radak is not on the source sheet. That's something Dalia taught her grandchild, and that's what I read. But over here, if you look into the Mechilta, so look at 19. Rabbi Natan Omer. What does Rabbi Natan say? Lo alach Yonah ela la'abed et atzmo bayam. I said this in my other class about Eliyahu Navi, and I got so much hate mail when I said Eliyahu Navi went to commit suicide. Because it does say that Eliyahu Navi, when he goes and runs to the desert, he says, I want to die. Yonah Navi we see numerous times. Like when he says, Vayomer aleim, he tells the sailors, Sa'uni vatiluni el hayam. Throw me into the raging sea. What do you think's going to happen to him? He doesn't know he's going to be swallowed by a fish and then spit out and thrown to the shores. His assumption is he's going to die. That's a good question. You have to learn. Yafeh. So you have to learn the midrashim there. What is he saying? Throw me into the water. Vayishtok hayam elechem. Ki yode'ani ki b'sheli hasar hagadol hazeh alechem. I know I'm the problem. By the way, knowing you're the problem is already half the solution. Because most people, they don't know they're the problem. Most people are really good at pointing at, if they were, I saw a quote, it says, before Yom Kippurim, it's a very good time to ask forgiveness. So think very carefully. And if you did anything wrong to me, I'm still accepting apologies. Right? Unfortunately, people walk around like that all the time. It's not me. They say there was an old man who his wife calls him while he's on the road. He says, Gregory, I heard that there's terrible traffic because there's a lunatic going the wrong way on the freeway. And he says, Anita, you must be joking. I'm on the freeway and there are thousands of cars going the wrong way. Right? Now, we look at this person and you say, fool. But the truth is, we're that fool. More often than not, if you ask people why your life is so bad, they will give you 15 other people who are the cause of their bad life. Instead of for once looking in the mirror and saying, you know, I might be complicit. I might be, maybe I'm 10% of the problem. Maybe my spouse is 90%. Mine not. Mine is always 100%, right? But 100% of the good, of the good, of the good, right? Nobody is ever in the dynamic where there's 0 to 100. Never. It never happens. So even if you're only 1% of the problem and the other person is 99, at the very least, you have to accept I'm the 1%. And I can't necessarily change the 99. I could accept the 1. Yonah Navi is very self-aware. He knows he's the problem. What does he want to do? Ad motzeh sharei ha'avot v'nevi'im natnu nafsham al Yisrael. This is not a new trend that the Jewish leaders are willing to sacrifice their personal lives for the good of the Jewish people. And I'm saying this carefully because this is not martyrdom. B'Moshe makatuv, after Chet HaEgel, Hashem says, I'm going to destroy the Jewish people. We're starting a new nation from you. Immediately Moshe, now you have to understand, this is his lifetime opportunity. We could start a whole nation just from you. What does a true leader say? HaKadosh Baruch Hu, if you're going to destroy my people, just wipe me out. Take me out. I don't want to be a part of this plan. I am only good to serve the people. And if the people don't exist, I don't want to be a part of the story. You find another place. David HaMelech. Vayomer David Elohim. He sees that the Jewish people are getting punished. Halo ani amarti limnot ba'am. He comes and he complains to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He says, why are you punishing the people? Anything that goes wrong in this nation is my fault. So punish me. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, leave the Jewish people alone. Punish me. Why start up with them? Yonah Navi is doing the exact same thing. Shaarei ha'avot v'hanevi'im natnu nafsham al Yisrael. Yonah Navi sees, like Rachel said, here's going to be the problem. Yonah is going to go to Nineveh. He's going to warn them. And what he's afraid of actually does happen. So if you look with me a minute, let's look together. We have till 45. Oh, amazing. So till tomorrow morning. Amazing. Look at, I'm going to jump a little further. Look at, okay. Go to Perek Bet, so the second chapter, Pasuk Daled. Okay, this is after the whole story. I'm going to let you read it on your own. Yonah in the innards of the Leviathan, of the how he prays. His tefillah is beautiful and important for you to look at. That's all going to be in the beginning of chapter 2. I want to jump to chapter 3, where Kadosh Baruch Hu sends him a second time. He says, "This time you're going back. You're going to Nineveh." Look at pasuk. Let's start from the beginning. Vahi dvar Adonai el Yonah shenit. I'm at the beginning of chapter 3. Hashem gives him a second prophecy. Kum lech el Nineveh. Go to the city now of Nineveh. Ukra ele et hakriya asher anochi dover elecha. Go and tell them what I told you. Vayakam Yonah. So this time Yonah goes. Vayelech el Nineveh kedvar Adonai. V'Nineveh hayta ir gdola leElohim mehalach shel. It was so big that walking that distance of the entire city would take at least a 3-day walk. ויחל יונה לבוא בעיר מהלך יום אחד ויקרא ויאמר, and he goes and he starts screaming in the city that in 40 days this city is going to be destroyed. Pasuk A, verse 5, ויאמינו אנשי נינווה באלוהים, and they believed, these were believers, ויקרו צום, they start fasting, וילבשו שקים מגדולים ועד they put on sackcloth, similar to the response you see in Megillat Esther, when Mordechai, Esther sends, right, go לך כנוס את כל היהודים, מנער ועד זקן, טף ונשים, and they וצומו עליי, ואל תאכלו ואל תשתו. ויגיע הדבר אל מלך נינווה, and this shmuah, this rumor comes to the king, and he gets up from his throne, he takes off his beautiful clothes, and he puts on a sackcloth, and he rips it, and he sits on the ground, all in mourning. ויזעק ויאמר בנינווה מטעם המלך. Now they see the king is mourning. They know there's a serious business. And everybody there does Teshuvah. ויזעק ויאמר בנינווה, okay. Look at pasuk chet, the 8th verse. ויתכסו שקים האדם והבהמה ויקראו אל אלוהים בחזקה. So the people, the animals, the entire city is now doing Teshuvah. וישובו איש מדרכו הרע ומן החמאס אשר בכפיהם. מי יודע, ישוב וניחם אלוהים ושב מחרון אפול ולא נאבד. They say maybe God sent us a prophet so that we could actually repent. And who knows, maybe our fate won't be sealed. And if you'll recall, last Shul, I told you there's a rule of thumb when it comes to prophecy. Our HaShamayim tell us that any prophecy that is good is never contingent on something. If the prophet said it's going to happen and it's good, it's going to happen. Bad prophecies are always contingent on the people not changing. The minute the person changes, the prophecy is annulled. That's the whole point. So they do Teshuvah. וירא אלוהים את מעשיהם כי שבו מדרכם הרע. Kadosh Baruch Hu says that they do Teshuvah. וינחם אלוהים על הרע אשר דיבר לעשות להם ולא עשה. And Hashem says, I'm repealing the decree. What is Yonah Hanavi's response? וירא אל יונה רעה גדולה. ויחר לו. He's angry. Yonah Hanavi is angry. ויתפלל אל אדוני, and he prays to הקדוש ברוך הוא, ויאמר, אנא אדוני, הלא זה דברי עד היותי על אדמתי, על כן קידמתי לברוך תרשישה, כי ידעתי כי אתה אל חנון ורחום ערך אפיים ורב חסד וניחם על הרע. I knew this was going to happen. I knew that they would do teshuvah. I knew that you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you have the 13 midot that we're going to say over and over and over again, Adonai, Adonai. I know how you act. And this is exactly why I didn't want to come. What does Yonah care so much if they do teshuvah? Can we afterwards get them to be quiet? Yeah, Hannah.
Bnei Israel, when it comes to Bnei Israel, they don't do Teshuvah. People of the world will say, no, the Satan will say, look, the nations of the world do Teshuvah when you send their prophets.
Oh.
Look at Bnei Israel. They're busy burning the blood.
Yefé מאוד. Yonah Navi was not running away because of himself. This was not a selfish endeavor. It's not because he was afraid. It's not because he was a coward. Quite to the contrary. It's because he was a genuine leader of the Jewish people. And one of the hallmarks of being a good Jewish leader is that you have to be the advocate of the Jewish people. You have to be their number one representative. You don't get to sell them out. What kind of ambassador are you? If you can't stand up for your nation, then step aside and let somebody else. You can't be the prime minister if you don't know how to defend your people. That's the hallmark of Jewish leadership. Yonah Navi is worried. He says, I'm going to go, and this whole nation in 40 days is going to do Teshuvah, overnight. And what's it going to do to the Jewish people, who already were doing chataim, averot? It's going to make us look really, really bad. I'm not willing to be that person. I'm not signing up for the job. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, kill me. Find somebody else. I'm not being that messenger. And you find that sometimes you see Jewish leadership who they're just hell-bent at telling you how bad the Jewish people are. And you should know already by the things that they say about Jews that they're not leadership. What they are, I don't know. Maybe it's a wolf in sheep's clothing. But a leader, it's not. HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells us, Af al pi shechata, Yisraelu. Even when the Jewish people sin, we're still his nation. We never lose that title. Yes, HaKadosh Baruch Hu could be angry, but we never lose it. You find, sometimes even in exaggerated fashion, if you look at the link that I sent you, open the second link where it says Berdichev. I want to tell you a story. Yeah? Look at, let's see. Okay, look at the link that says berdichev.co.il. If you just click on it, it'll open it up. So you find throughout history leaders who really, they don't just stand up for the Jewish people, but they stand up in ways that are almost ludicrous. Almost ludicrous. One of those leaders lived in a little city not so long ago, maybe 200 years ago, in a little city called Berdichev. Now, Berdichev has a personal place in my heart because my great-grandmother, who I'm named after, comes from that city. Now, today it's in the Ukraine. It used to be in the USSR. One day it was under. It's about a 2.5-hour drive on a good day from Kiev, the capital, northwest. Yeah, it's a little city in Ukraine. It's the capital of Ukraine. There was a rabbi, his name was Rabbi Levi Yitzchak, the Berdichev Rav, they called him. And he was known as the Sanigoron Shel Yisrael. He was known as the Jewish people's advocate. There are many stories about the lunacy, almost, of the things he would say to God to defend the Jewish people. So, for example, if during Shacharit he would see people outside, fiddling with their cars, on their phones, instead of giving them rebuke, he would turn to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and say, look at what good children you have. Even when they're busy with their cars and their phones, they're still praying to you. They're such good people. And he had the ability to just twist things in a way. And sometimes you listen to these stories like, so silly. No, he was onto something much bigger, which is there are enough people, just open the news. There are enough people who have enough bad things to say about the Jewish nation. We don't need to add to that list. Sure, internally, we're not a bunch of liars, so we have to be able to obviously cross-examine and critique ourselves. But when it comes to the nations of the world, we have to be able to have this unified voice of, we are the most beautiful nation. We are beautiful people. I want to read you a poem. I have a few minutes. That he said right before the prayer that Ashkenazim say, Kal Nidre. So one of the highlights of Ashkenazi tefillah is on Yom Kippurim, they open the ark and they annul their vows. So what happens? If you look over here, you have the words to the song. They're in Yiddish. You're going to indulge me because I don't think Yiddish is anybody's first language except for mine, unless Yochanan's with us. No, he's not here tonight? Okay, so he talks in Yiddish because he's talking to the people more than he's talking to God. I want to read to you what he wrote. Now, if you look on the bottom, there's actually a Tirgum Li'ivrit. There is a Tirgum. Again, the link could be found either in the Google Classroom or you're going to find it in our WhatsApp group. He turns and he says, Ribono shel olam, master of the world. Lo mir machen a bait. He says, let's make an exchange. Let's do business. It doesn't sense. Erev Yom Kippurim, everybody's dressed in white. They just did Teshuvah. He says, hold on. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we're in court now. I'm the Jewish lawyer. Let's go for arbitration. What kind of exchange? He says, you know what? Ich will dir geben chataim avaynos upshoim. Oy vei tata. He says, this is the exchange. I'm going to give you all the Jewish people's avonot, chataim, all their sins. I'm sending your way. You take that. Tell me was du fragen, was du was mir geben dafür. You're going to ask me, so what do I have to give you in exchange? Right? If HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to take all the sins, so what are we getting back? He says, let me tell you, I have a list. What I'm asking you, you take all the sins. In return, make sure you give the Jewish people selicha, mechila, kapara. You clean the slate perfectly. But once you do that, that's just the beginning, God. One second, I want more. So God, if you think, okay, deal. I'm going to send all the sins. You send back a pure, nice year for the Jewish people. No. Hold on. As a good lawyer, I have some more things I want to ask for. He says, what do I want to ask for? I need to add an addendum over here.
What did I miss?
I said, this is a class on Yiddish. Welcome back, 101. Right? What am I going to give you? Add in the fine print over there. It's a little better than Rav Sonsino's Yiddish. He says, I want you to add that the Jewish people, this year, they need baneh, chayeh, umizoneh. What are these three things? He says, wait, let me spell it out for you. And you can read it over here in Yiddish. I'm going to tell you to in English. So I want you to give them children. What kind of children? Banim, uvnei banim, oskim b'torah u'mitzvot. Don't just give me children. Give me children who follow the path of Torah, of mitzvot, who are good, upstanding citizens. Mizoneh. You know, when people struggle with poverty, they make really bad decisions. When people can't figure out where tomorrow they're going to pay their bills from, they struggle. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I want you to promise the Jewish nation, this year, nobody's going to be worried how they're paying their bills. And the last thing I want you to add, make sure everybody has food. Because some people have a lot of money, but food they don't have on their table. What kind of food? I'm going to tell you. I want there to be enough food that even the little kids are going to get so full. Because v'achalta, v'savata, u'verachta, there's going to be so much abundance in the Jewish people. And then he ends off, he says, you know, you're wondering why this exchange is good? It's very simple, God. He picks on, I don't know why. He says the Egyptians, they're busy worshiping their idols. The Persians, they're busy worshiping their idols. But me and the Jewish people, you know what we're going to go do now? We're going to go scream, Yitkada, Vyitkada, Shemei Rabbah. We're the only nation in the world who's going to stand up on the top of the mountain that belongs to us and scream to the entire world the greatness of who you are. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in order for us to do our job, you need to be a better provider. And you look at this and you say, what kind of audacity? The answer is it's the audacity of a leader. Of a true leader who understands that if I am not going to advocate for my people, who will? It makes sense to me when our enemies say bad things about us. But how could it be when you open a newspaper or you open any social media and you see our leader saying bad things? So then you have to write hashtag not my leader. Right? That's what it has to say. It cannot be that you lead Am Yisrael and all you have to say is bad things. Internally, yes. I wonder if I can share one more thought. Yonah Navi made a mistake. Because once we get past the nationhood, there's a much bigger picture to the world. And I say this with caution because today, I believe, in the climate that the Jewish people find ourselves, it's the survival of our nation we need to focus on. Right now, we don't necessarily have the capacity to be universalists. I know we've been talking about this during our shiurim with Rabbi Eliyahu ben Amozeg. Right now, it's theory. There's a world that we're fighting. There's evil that needs to be eradicated and decimated so that good could flourish. And we're not yet in a place to say, well, what's the vision for the world? But we're not allowed to lose that. Because our redemption, our nationhood, is not a selfish one. The Jewish people don't exist just to be a selfish entity on planet Earth. That's not our goal. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu explains this to Yonah, and I ask you, read it on your own. I'm going to tell it to you. Yonah Navi leaves the city, and again, he's angry. And he falls asleep. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes this beautiful plant grow near him. Because you have to understand, after 3 days of being stuck in the stomach of a fish, you can imagine how wrinkled his skin is. You come out of the bath a half hour too late, right? He needs shade. He's in the hot desert. Finally, there's shade. After a few hours, he wakes up and this beautiful plant dies. And he's sad. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Yonah, why are you so sad? He said, because there was a beautiful plant, there was life, and now it's dead. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives him musar. He says, Yonah Navi, there was a plant that you did nothing to create. You benefited from. It wilted. It died. And you are having so much pain because something so beautiful was destroyed. I created humanity. I created the people who live in the city of Nineveh. Why can't you understand, Yonah, that once you're done with standing up for the Jewish nation, all of humanity are my children? It might not be your nation. You might not be the ambassador. You might not be their representative. But can you for a second understand that they're my people? Can you understand that destroying a whole nation just because it might make yours look bad is harmful? It's not good. It's not right. And Yonah Navi takes that musar, he takes that rebuke to heart, which is, so we've taken care of the individual. We've taken care of the nation. What about all God's children? What about a world that's broken? What about once we've fixed our own small environment and we've stabilized things, there's a globalization that has to take place through our lens. Because if we don't do our job, who will? If we as the ambassadors of HaKadosh Baruch Hu don't stand up and say, hold on, but there are nations out there that are hurting, that are crying, that are dying. Maybe it's not in my territory, maybe it's not in my land, but they're my people too. Because Adam HaRishon, I hate to break it to you, was not Jewish. He was the first human being on planet Earth. And every single human being, Nivra B'Tselem Elohim. We are all created in the image of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And if we can't look at another person and say, I don't care what color, and I don't care what race, and I don't care what religion, we're all part of the same human race. And because we're part of the same planet, we need to care for each other. If we can't get to that place, then we're just as selfish and small-minded as any other nation that we critique. And that's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Yonah. It's true that you're the exclusive prophet of the Jews. I sent you on a global mission. I sent you on a mission to save my people too. And I want to end with this. If you can, look at the last link. There's a beautiful prayer that is found in the Ashkenazi Machzorim. We're going all Ashkenaz today. I must have had too much gefilte fish. I don't know what happened. And maybe I'm doing Teshuvah or I'm regressing. I don't know which, depends who we ask. Yes, I don't know who. I don't know who the author of the Piyut is. I have to be honest, I went down this little rabbit hole trying to find the author. I called my mother. She said she's going to do research. I reached out to my dear friend who is not with us on the screen, Aliza Goldman, who is really the expert go-to when it comes to tefillot, sidurim. She said she doesn't know because she's already done Teshuvah 10 years ago and only prays with Sephardic and Yemenite Machzorim. I know. I told her, I said, well, maybe you have some. So she reached out to her brother, and we're going to find out maybe in the Machzor Vitri, which is the old Ashkenazi Machzor, if we could find the author. In general, if you look at the Piyutim in the Machzorim of Ashkenaz, two things are very evident. One, great scholars wrote them. What do I mean by great scholars? Every single verse is encrypted with different references from the Tanakh, which is why you'll see the link I sent you. I have no idea who wrote this source sheet. I can't tell you if I like the person, I don't, it doesn't matter. The only reason I gave you that specific source sheet is because every single verse from this piyut, from this poem, he shows you where in the Tanakh it came from. So Yeshayahu, Yirmiyahu, Tehillim, the brilliance is exceptional. With the brilliance comes the convolution, unfortunately. I love Yom Kippurim as a Sephardic woman. Why? It's so beautiful. We chant the same words that I actually understand over and over and over again. I remember growing up, the worst part is they call them the yotzerot. We say yotzers. They're little parts in the Siddur that you mumble to yourself. Now, they're tiny. They're tiny letters. And the worst part is because they're so encrypted, you don't know what you're saying. They look like Hebrew letters. Unless, like I said, you're a brilliant scholar, you really have no clue what you're reading. This is a piyut that's actually quite understandable, and I'd like to end with this. So if you can,
Famous Ashkenazi
I'm listening.
to get everyone to switch to Sephardic Machzorim with high holidays, because he said it would be worth it if we all could understand the words that we're saying on the holidays. But instead, we insist on saying words we don't understand.
We don't understand. Of course, if there's anything you're not going to change, it's going to be the tefillah when it comes to Ashkenazi prayer. There's a lot of emotion attached to it. And whenever there's motion, there's a little less logic. That's true for everybody. I want to look at this tefillah and end with this. Yes, open it up. It's a Sefaria link I sent you, titled V'yetayu. You might know this because there are songs now in Hebrew. For example, Odelia Berlin has a song on it in Hebrew. What is the piyut? So it's said right after Unetane Tokef, right before Kiddusha. So right before we're going to now proclaim HaKadosh Baruch Hu as the leader of the world, there's this beautiful little piyut. It goes like this. V'yetayu kol lo avdecha v'yivarchu shem kvodecha. And there's going to come a day when everybody's going to come serve you. Ve'yagidu ba'im tzidkecha. They're going to come and tell about your righteousness. V'yidrashucha amim lo yaducha. The nations of the world are going to come to the Jewish people and say, teach us. We want to know more about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. V'yalucha kol afsei haaretz. Everywhere in the world, your name is going to be in the mouths of people. Thank God, bless God. There's a God in the world. V'yomru tamid yigdal Adonai. And they're constantly going to say, similar to the bracha that Avraham Avinu got, v'nivrechu b'cha kol mishpachot ha'adama. The blessing of HaKadosh Baruch Hu will be around the whole world. V'yizbechu lecha et zivchehem. And they're going to bring sacrifices to you. V'yiznechu et atzbehem. V'yachperu im psilehem. There will come a time when the world comes to a recognition. There's one creator. There's one Torah. There's one way, not culture. Culture will always be different. Everybody's ethnicity is going to stay. But the ability to look at a world that's not fragmented, that is wholesome, that runs according to the plan of the one that created it, it's a dream. It's a dream that is so beautiful, and unfortunately today might feel very far away because we live in a world that is so shattered. But our goal, our vision, is that one day, and the piyut keeps going on, where one day, v'yitnu lecha keter melucha. That's the last verse. One day, you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, will be crowned not just by the Jewish people, not just by the small nation of Israel, but the entire world will recognize, wow, Adonai echad u'shmo echad. There's one God, there's one creator, which makes us all part of one race, which makes us all part of the human experience. And it will be the prophecy of, we could put down our swords, right? It says, v'chititu chavotam li'itim. What's going to happen? One day, when we recognize, all this killing, all this war, who wins wars? Nobody. The answer is whoever loses less becomes the winner. You don't have to go far. We don't have to go far. Am Yisrael has been in war for many years, but explicitly this year, even those who survive, that's not called survival. A person who 90% of their body is gone, but they still have a heartbeat, that's called surviving. War is ugly. It is ugly. And one day we pray. Our tefillah is that one day, after our nation is healed, there's going to be a world that we will be able to inspire to say, Chevra, there's a different way to do it. There's a different way for us to all live side by side. We can be friends. We can be neighbors. So much so that the prophet says we will come to a place where we will not need weaponry. We're going to be able to take them. I know there's an organization that takes all the rockets that come to Sderot and they turn them into beautiful artwork. Yep. One day that's going to be us. We're going to be able to go online and find all these beautiful pieces that were once machine guns and they were once rockets, and today they're useless because we've brought the world. I say we as Am Yisrael, we as those who have been given and tasked with a mission of not just following Torah, but bringing it to the rest of the world, where we're going to be able to say, you know what? Adonai echad u'shmo echad. There's one God, there's one nation, there's one humanity. And we're going to be able to live side by side. And I pray, Bezrat Hashem, we're going now into Yom HaKippurim. So obviously there's a very personal side of Yom HaKippurim, of Selicha, Mechila, Kapara. There's a national side. Our nation, if it needs all our tefillot, it's going to be this year. We need to be able to pray so hard. I would add to Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Berdichev's list so many more things that Am Yisrael needs. It's more than just children and food and poverty. It's peace and the return of hostages and war to end and our land back and more peace. And then the next step, we have to pray for the world. And I'm blessing us. I'm blessing all of us that we should live in that world where we can sit together and we could drink coffee and we could sit and watch our children grow old and our grandchildren. Bezrat Hashem, one day soon. Until then, I want to wish you a Gmar Chatima Tova. Thank you for learning with me. And I will see most of you tomorrow night.